Our next speaker, our final speaker for the day, and again, thank you very much for Yiboneh for putting this together, for bringing us on this one stage. And we've been talking a lot about Noachides today because I need the Noah. And I happen to know Tovia, I've known him for a long time. I actually produced 2 videos for him, 2 of his debates. And one of the reasons I've known Tovia for a long time, and but the funny thing that kept happening, I mean, if you know Tovia, you know his whole thrust is outreach Judaism, and of course this is to bring Jews back to Torah, and it's a big enough And what surprised me when I got to know it is I thought that'd be some small task, but it's not. Come to America sometime, you know. So the main thing is that something surprising kept happening is I would be involved in venues, in lecturing on my material, and I would meet. It happens all the time. I would be meeting newly minted Noahides. These are non-Jews who have embraced the Shem HaMitzvot. They've embraced the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, and they've rejected idolatry. And I would always, this happened so many times. I went up, there was a couple, they were in their 70s. And that's not old because I'm 70 this year. But anyway, it was a couple of years ago. And they had come to one of the talks, and we were talking, and they said, "Are you Jim Long?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, you're a Noahide, right?" And I said, "We're Noahides now." And then they're 70s. And I said, "Wow, well, you know, congratulations, and you know, welcome into a brand new world." And I said, they said, "We'll tell you how new we are. We haven't told our pastor yet." Woo! So they really hadn't dropped it on their ministry yet. But the thing, what I'm getting at is, not to eat into Tovia's time, is I said, "So what? We don't have a lot of time this evening. You have to go. But what started you on your journey?" They said, "Tovia Singer." And you know, if you watched any of Tovia's you know, YouTube videos or things like that, he does not on purpose reach out to non-Jews. But what happened with these people that I met that night, and many others that I met who had been you know, had not embraced the Shem HaMitzvot, had not become Noachides, is that they heard of this Tovia guy, and he's doing debates. And they said, to a man and woman, they said to me, "We went to his website because we were going to listen to his stuff, and we were going to get our Bible, and we were going to prove him wrong." Well, it didn't happen. He proved them wrong, and suddenly they're embracing Torah. So this is a gentleman that I know that is doing this amazing work in outreach Judaism, which it ought to be / you know, Noahidism or something. And I've been a friend of his for a long time, and I know that he's a genuinely entertaining, you know, talker. You know that anyway, so let's bring you up, Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Chag Sameach. First, to get this part out of the way, it means so much to me to be here with so many friends, because today is not just any day, it's a special day, because today is my anniversary. Today is the 132nd day since my Aliyah. And tomorrow is going to be another anniversary, the 133rd day of my Aliyah. Every day is, I really, people ask me, how's it been, how's it? And it really has not, I feel like I'm dreaming. You know what I'm talking about, right? I feel like I'm dreaming. And when I received my Israeli passport in the mail last week, and I opened the front cover, unlike a typical American, I opened it and there was nothing there, because you open it like a sitter. It's so wonderful. So I went, oh yeah, I forgot the American. So I then opened it from the other direction. Yeah, and it says nationality Israeli. And since I received it, and I received it a little more than every single day, I open it and read those words and then put it back. Very, very special. The events that are unfolding before our eyes today is staggering. No one knows the numbers. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, we just don't know, of B'nai Noach, of people who are coming to the Jewish faith all over the world. It's an amazing thing. This never happened in history. There were always unique individuals like this, but to happen where they're flowing in with such numbers, it's really something completely shocking. And it's shocking because not only is it unprecedented, again, there were individuals in history, and of course, before the Torah was given, there were many individuals like this, but today should be, now is the oddest time that people should be turning to the Jewish people, should be grabbing our shirt, saying we want to be close to you. Why is today the oddest day? Because we should be radioactive. After what happened 70 years ago, people should say, yeah, a Jew over there, let's go over here. There's Jews over here, let's just stay as far away from them as possible, because these are people that are good friends at the United Nations. Where would we be without the United Nations? Every day I say, thank God for the United Nations. Without the United Nations, we'd be... This is Jewish humor. Is this too complicated for this section? I'll slow it all down. But they're coming. They're coming. I want to, for a moment, even before we move on, to the term Noachide is an anachronism, and it's a term that's really quite unclear to most people what precisely is a Noachide. What does this mean? And it's not really, I don't think it's not my favorite word, because it doesn't, people are puzzled, what does it mean, and what is a Noachide, and is a Noachide sort of like a second class or a Judaism light? What is a Noachide? What does this all mean? So the Jewish people, and Rabbi Richmond spoke about this, the Jewish people are completely unique in that we are we're a nation, we're an Am, but we're also a people of faith. This doesn't exist with other religions. But with the Klal Yisrael, we are a nation, but there are people around the world who are saying, we believe in the God who you believe in. We bend our knee to the God who you worship. We cherish HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu cherishes them. It's very strange. Tomorrow, mamish in 24 hours from now, there'll be tens of thousands of Christians who'll be marching right here in Yerushalayim. Despite what people think, they're not a monolithic group. They're all evangelical Christians. They all love Israel, and they do. They are almost all from a denomination or a thinking called a dispensationalist Christianity. It's not germane to this presentation of what that means. If you ask me, I'm going to do a Q&A part. I'll explain to you. So they all believe that the covenant that God made with the Jewish people is eternal and it cannot be done, and the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, and God has kept his promise and we have returned, and Genesis chapter 12 verse 3 stands like a rock, that those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel, chas v'chalila, will be cursed in your name. All the peoples of the earth, all the families of the earth will be blessed. They believe that, every one of them. However, there is some variance. They're all very into Jewish things. Today, if you want to be a big hit in I know he said in your church, in a church, so the more Jewish things you do, the more interesting it is. Oh, give a look. There are pastors coming out in their congregation wearing a talis and tefillin, they're wearing a shtreimel, a begached. The more Jewish, that part I made up. The more Jewish it is, the better. If he could come out with 14 yarmulkes on his head and like this, coming out like this, with shofars blowing, this is the best thing in the world. His membership will shoot up completely. So they're all that. People are drawn to anything Jewish. But then among them, there is some variance. There are people that are coming to buy. What I mean is, there are many of those thousands of Christians that are coming here because they want to soak it in, because they want to proclaim that our hearts are with you, that we support Israel. They're here to enjoy Yerushalayim, no question. Some of them came for that, but they also came to sell. Meaning, they came here to bring to not only the great commission of Matthew 28 verse 19, to go into all nations, but go to one unique nation, Matthew chapter 10. Go not into the way of the Gentiles in the city of Samaritans, enter not. Go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, Romans chapter 1. Many of you went to yeshiva, you know this. Is this too to the Jew first and then to the Greek? That means they're here to bring the gospel to the Jews. There are many of them. Not all of them, but it's not few either. And I want you to know that those people in particular, that last group, are movement. They're not going, what a pleasure that there are Noachides. This is the biggest joy in my life. I never had such a pleasant idea that there should be B'nai Noach, or there should be people who are choosing the Jewish faith. Why? Because virtually the entire so-called Noachide movement, almost all of them, are coming from former evangelical Christians. Who today are walking around saying, I'm a Ben Noach? Who do you think? They daven with Hillary Clinton in a high church Episcopalian church? You think Hillary is a chance that Chelsea? No, this is not going to come from there. And they're not former Hindus who used to pray to Hanuman, the monkey god. These are not, maybe a few, but not too many. And they're not, generally speaking, they're not coming from the Greek Orthodox Church or any of the Orthodox churches, and they're generally not coming from the Roman Catholic Church, from the Western Church, from the Latin Church. Almost all of them are coming from the evangelical, conservative, born-again Christians, and these are people who have studied the Christian religion. They were originally drawn to the Messianic movement from their other churches they came from, whether they were Baptists or charismatic churches like the Assemblies of God, and then he knows, give a look, there's a Messianic movement. They're doing things Jewish, they're doing things in Hebrew. This is the way Jesus would have done it. And they get involved in the Messianic movement, but it doesn't take them too long. They are spiritually sensitive enough to figure out that there's no theological difference between what the Baptists believe and what the Messianic movement believes. There's no difference really between what a charismatic church like the Assemblies of God believes and what a Messianic congregation in Philadelphia called Kanai Nahara, what they believe. Usually if the name of the congregation sounds a little too Jewish, you should double check. So if it's called, Beth Abraham, you can't be sure, right? But if it's Zygazund, it should be, take another look. It's depending, it's a scale. The more Jewish it is, probably this is not a good idea. I remember I used to go to Messianic conventions. I didn't go to daven, but I went there to just observe what was going on. And there's always a few characters who are wearing full Hasidic garb, full-blown Hasidic garb, right? And you know, the streimel, the fur hat, the blood, and they're right there at a UMJC conference. They're right there. You can be, and then you start talking to them. They sound like a truck driver from Alabama. And what happened over here? Always, right? Those people are definitely not Jewish, right? I'm not making this up, right? Okay, good. So they're not so happy with the Noachide, and they say something, these Christians say something that has to be, of all the things that Christians say, this has to be one of the oddest, oh, that's ridiculous, no, that's not true, it's not one of the, no, the oddest thing is 1 Corinthians 11:24 and Luke 22:19, that you should eat the body and drink the blood of the Messiah. That's pretty much the nuttiest thing, but it's close to that. In that they say that the whole Noachide movement, the rabbis invented it. This is a rabbinic thing. There's no such thing. There never was such a thing. And the rabbis made up this whole thing. And if you've watched the pulse of this movement, you can tell they're always going, there's whole videos, the Noachides, the rabbis made up Noachides and so on. And it's really quite a shocking statement, because if there were no laws given to Adam Rishon, carried on through Noach, his son, Shem, Avram, if there were no laws prior to the giving of the Torah in the year 2448, what exactly did the people of Sodom do wrong? And when Abraham is a blessed memory in chapter 18, at the end of the chapter, is bargaining with God that perhaps there are 50 righteous people in Sodom, and it goes back and forth. What did he mean righteous? By what standard could you have been righteous if there were no Noachide laws, if they didn't exist? And then if there are 40, 45, 30, what would have made them, and what exactly did Cain do wrong? And when Klal Yisrael passed through Ammon and Moab, and they didn't come out to greet them with food and with drink, they didn't take care of the strangers, and for that, there's a few psukim devoted to them. What did they do wrong? They didn't have any. They weren't at Mount Sinai. If there were no mitzvos prior to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, then they didn't do anything wrong. None of this makes any sense at all. What is going on? So it's very, very clear that there were mitzvos. Now, when we talk, you know this, but I'll say this for those who are not familiar. When we talk about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the seven laws, there are really 7 categories of laws, and those who observe them, because the God of Israel commanded it, these are the Chasidei Umas Olam. These are the Hasidim, these are the pious of the nations of the world. A person must say, no, I'm not stealing because it doesn't make sense to me. If you go to the store and you buy something, and when the cashier gives you change, and you see that in the change you're supposed to be getting back 20 shekels change, but you see there are 2 new bills and they were stuck together, and the cashier just didn't notice it, and you're about to walk away. And so before you do that, you go, whoa. Or you're in America and you walk there, you're going out of Walmart, oh, look at these 2 20s stuck together, she didn't realize it. So a person has to say, the God of Israel commanded me that I shouldn't take anything up early. And right away you go back to the cashier and give it back. Why? Because Hashem commanded me. That's why. Not because it makes sense to me. Then you've not fulfilled that commandment at all. It's a very special thing. And such a person has a chelik in Olam Haba. In fact, the Chasidei Umas Olam play a central role in the Messianic Age. The entire end of Sefer Zechariah, the book of Zechariah, is really devoted to the people, to the Umas Olam that come to the Jewish people. Zechariah chapter 8, 10 Gentiles of different nations will grab the shirt of a Jew and say, take us with you, because now we know that God is with you. I had a Christian once say to me that, don't take the hem of a Jew, that's Jesus. But I said, you didn't look at the you, because in English, you can't tell if it's one or many, but Hebrew doesn't work exactly that way, and it's y'all. The Hebrew is y'all, imochem, is not one person. Nebuch, if a person reads scripture in English, let alone the wonderful King James Bible, well, then you might as well, you're in huge trouble. It's not that translations sort of lose the color. Translations are treason. They're a commentary at best. If you even try if you're reading a translation, at best you're kissing God through a towel. People wonder, I know this is on the minds of so many dear people who've come to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're perplexed by the status of B'nai Noah. And to them, I know they're thinking, this has to be kind of a Judaism light. This has to be something. What's so special about it? Why is it so important? You know, the end of Zechariah, the Haftarah, the Haftarah of the opening of Sukkot, the last chapter of Zechariah, it's all devoted to the nations of the world. The whole world will know. Zechariah 14, verse 9, the closing passage of the Elenu, it says, V'nemar, that's a quote directly from Sefer Zechariah. The whole end of Zechariah is about the nations of the world. In fact, not only in Zechariah, but throughout the Nevi'im, it's about all the nations will flow at Yerushalayim. Ki mitzion teitzitor u'devar Hashem Yerushalayim. The nations are going to come here. And as you heard before, the role of the Mashiach is to give rebuke, to give hoichacha, to be the teacher to the world. That's it. He's not a miracle man. He might do miracles. Never in Tanakh does it say Mashiach can do a miracle. This was very bothersome to the church, because in the Christian Bible, Jesus is doing miracles everywhere. There's miracle here, miracle there. Oh, he's doing miracles, pick a card, which card, I don't know. It's doing miracles. But the truth is, there's nothing remotely right. There's nowhere in Tanakh that you see such a thing. In Tanakh, it's that he will rebuke the nations. He'll be a teacher. He won't judge people after the sight of his eyes, but after the spirit that's been placed upon him, Isaiah chapter 11. So literally, in the Christian Bible, Luke in particular, I'm thinking of Luke chapter 4, verse 16, 17, and 18, we have Jesus, we are told, goes into a shul, a synagogue, on the Shabbat, and he reads from the Haftarah, and he's reading from Isaiah chapter 61, where Isaiah is talking in the first person, but he talks about that I'm here to bring the good news, Besaris Tavis, and so on and so forth, and to give freedom, and so on. And it says there to give sight to the blind. If you're reading Luke chapter 4, verse 16 through 18, it says to provide sight to the blind. If you go back to Isaiah 61, it's mamash not there. Luke interpolated that passage to make it look like the Messiah is supposed to be a healer. By the way, I'm not saying that the Mashiach will not do miracles. Maybe he will, but it's very clear Tanakh is not interested in it, and it's very clear that Luke is trying to line up Tanakh and interpolate the Jewish scriptures in order to make it look like that's a central feature of what the Messiah is supposed to do. I have heard Christians say to me that it's in the Septuagint. It is. People say to me, it's in the Septuagint. Jesus was reading from the Septuagint. Could you just plots? Could you imagine this? Listen to me. Even I'm not so the world is crazy. You're telling me that the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, is going, you know, I know this is a Hebrew Bible, but do you have an English Greek translation rather? Like the Holy Spirit going, you know, I haven't written a book in 500 years since Malachi. It's been a while. My Hebrew's a little rusty. Let's go to Septuagint. I mean, how preposterous. If you look in the text of Luke 4, and look, there are people in this room that know very well, if I'm making any of this stuff up, they would know. They're laughing because this is really quite true. It literally says he went and read from the scroll. How do you play with my Bible? How do you change the Word of God? And if you're going to alter the Jewish scriptures, you think I'm going to get baptized and destroy my relationship with my people, more importantly, my God? So, kinderlach, children who are born from above, not from below. I want to ask a question. Why is it that those who become, I'm going to use B'nai Noach, are so core important to the world, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan for mankind? I mean, it could be argued very easily that the role of the Jew is to be an Or Lagoyim, Isaiah 42 verse 6, 49 verse 6. That's our job. And if we're supposed to be an Or, to who? To the non-Jews. That's our whole purpose. It could be argued that Jews are here to facilitate that the non-Jews would come to know the God of Israel. That's what we're here for. We're here to facilitate the Noachide movement. In fact, before the Ten Commandments are given, immediately before, we are told that the Jewish people are an Am Segula, a chosen people. For what reason? To be the Kohen, to be a priest of the world. If we are the Kohanim of the world, who are our congregants? The nations of the world. It is so simple. Ki li kol haaretz. We only find that term twice in all of Tanakh. The world belongs to me, and your job is to be Kohanim to the world. So I want to ask you a question, kinderlach. Children, listen up. So why is it so special to be a Noachide? It seems to be that Noachide is, at first glance, is Judaism 1.0, and converting to Jew, or being born a Jew, that's Judaism 2.0. How is it shaykh that because we're not interested in Tovi's opinion, what does God think about all this? How is it possible, how is it shaykh that this is so important to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that all the kings, all the nations are going to come to Yerushalayim? And that's the big thing. Just listen up, listen. What is unique about these, let's say there are probably about 100 laws that fall into these seven categories. Hatzad hashava shebehem, what they all have in common is that they all logical. They're all rational laws. Meaning, if you're an employer and you have a business with a number of employees, it's very important to pay your employees on time. In fact, we're warned in Tanakh, it's one of the grave sins, and it can actually, that sin of not paying your employees on time could hold back Mashiach. It's a very dangerous business. Hungry, make sure your employees are paid on time. Don't say, I don't have it today, I'll have it Monday. It's an Issa d'Oraisa to do that. Not allowed to. Listen up carefully. You see, the Ben Noach is the true Abraham personality. He has real free will. He could simply say, look, the reason I want to pay my employees on time, the reason I don't steal, the reason I don't sleep with another man's wife, the reason I do that because I think it just makes sense to me. It's rational to me. These people are not the Hasidim U'Musaylim. Person has to say that it's from the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the God of Israel. You have to do the next time you're paying back. You see, I was given $20 extra, give back. Say, I'm doing this because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded me. The God of Israel commanded me. Mamish, you have Olam Haba from that. It's a tremendous, tremendous thing. But you have free will. When you perform that mitzvah, you can go either way. You can say, I'm just doing it because I'm a nice guy. I'm just doing it because I just don't think it's right to be looking at somebody else's wife. Or you can be doing it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded, not because it makes sense to me. There's a very big thing. The Jew, conversely, we don't have that free will. Why? Because we pick up a lulav and esrog, when we're Mekadesh HaShabbos, when we sanctify the Shabbos, And when we put on a pair of tzitzis, which means when a Jewish man puts on arba kanfas, puts on a clothing with 4 corners, he's then mechuyev to wear tzitzis on them. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa, it's a mitzvah from the Torah. Does he have choice to say, I am just putting on tefillin because it feels right to me? They'll be silly. I just like shaking around pretty fruits around. Can't do that. A Jew has a gun to his head, meaning rationally there's no way out. He has no bechir in it. He can't be Mekadesh Shabbos except because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded him. There is no other. There is no other possibility. When a Jewish person is eating from a matzah on Pesach, which is a mitzvah min HaTorah, how do you interpret this? Only you can interpret it because the God of Israel commanded me. There is no other. However, you children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, meaning you followers of Noah, you followers of these great prophets of blessed memory, you have real choice. You have real bechira. And you're here today probably because you chose the God of Israel over every other God. Welcome home. It's very beautiful. Listen up. It's really very holy. In the same chapter that's so critical that we read in the Haftarah, in the opening Haftarah of Sukkot, it's one of 2 places in Tanakh where we have an explicit reference to Milchemes Gog uMagog, the end-time war that immediately precedes the coming of the Mashiach. We have the end of Zechariah described as vividly and very famously Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. In fact, the term Gog comes, Milchemes Gog Me'eretz Magog, is Ezekiel 38. It's a confederacy of nations that will come to attack Israel over Yerushalayim, and that confederacy will be led by none other than Paras, by Persia, by Iran. How odd. This really is quite odd because, you know, going back to that whole period 2,500 years ago, so Yechezkel lived, of course, in the Babylonian Empire, and then it collapsed suddenly, and the Persian Empire rises, and Cyrus says, go back and build the Beis HaMikdash, go back and build the temple. This is how Chronicles end. This is how Ezra began. You don't have to tell you, there's Isaiah 44 and 45. It's been the oddest time to say that, oh, your arch enemy is going to be a country that shares no border with you. They have nothing to do with you, but they just want to destroy you. It's not like Syria might be a little upset about 500 square kilometers up in the north. They have nothing. What are their tightness? What is their interest? But they are the one right at the forefront of it. But the bigger question is, listen up, Kinderlach. Why does the Navi refer to this group as Gog, this nation as Gog? It's a mudna name, Gog. What does Gog mean? Anybody? A Gog is a roof. Listen up. A Gog means a roof. Simple, simple word. A roof is this. A roof. Why in a structure is the roof the most important thing? In fact, in any structure you would be in, if you had to choose between walls or just a roof, you would go with the roof. The roof is very important because the roof is something, it's made out of concrete, reinforced concrete, and it's really there to shelter you from all the elements and God knows what, and pouring rain and snow. The roof is critical, protects you from the sun. People who trust in the roof, strong, hard roof that's built, that could be makabel tumah. That's mechubel lekarka. That's the roof. The roof means that I trust in a hard, strong roof that I could see, I could feel, I could touch, and it's really strong. Okay. Listen up. We're going very holy now. Who are they going to war against? Well, as it turns out, we're told this explicitly in Sefer Daniel. Sefer Daniel, so delicious. So Daniel chapter 7 tells us, outlines for us a theme we find frequently in Nevi'im, and that is that the four kingdoms that will precede the coming of the Mashiach in Daniel chapter 7. It's an ecstatic chapter. It may look scary when you first read it, but it really isn't at all. And 8 is wow. But anyways, chapter 7, so we're told about the four kingdoms that have Shlita over Klal Yisrael, have sovereignty over Klal Yisrael, over the nation of Israel, beginning with the lion, but has wings and so on. The lion represents Babylon, the bear with the 3 ribs is Persia, then followed by the leopard with the 4 faces. That's obviously Greece, 4 faces because of the 4 kingdoms that emerged from the early death of Alexander the Great. And finally something that Daniel's going, what is that? 10 horns and a little horn. And Daniel knew this is horrible. The conversation is between Daniel and Gabriel, Daniel and an angel. At the end of the prophetic period, prophets are generally not speaking directly to God, but already going through an angel because it's being turned down. I'm not going to go into that, not germane to our program. The key is that when we're introduced to the Mashiach explicitly, we discover him in Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, and we are told this is the vision of the 5th, the final kingdom, and this is the kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that one will come like a son of man. It's all in Aramaic, and he will come with the clouds of heaven to who? To the Ancient of Days. I'm going down a little further because it's repeated over again, because Daniel is shattered by this last kingdom, and we are told, and he will come to those who are the holy ones. The Ancient of Days means God here, and he will come to the Kedushin, the holy people, the saintly people who are a nation who turn to him. He's coming with the clouds of heaven. Why is he coming with clouds of heaven? What does it mean? Some people go, he's coming on the clouds of heaven. There's some coloring books I've seen where they have a guy on clouds, like where's my cloud? No cloud I can't go, I need clouds. And he's flying through the sky on clouds. Well, that's silly. What is a cloud? Oh, no cloud, no, I can't go anywhere. Where is the cloud? It's running late. So the Mashiach is not coming on clouds. But what do the clouds mean? What do those clouds always mean in Tanakh? They are the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory. As you know from the opening Rashi on Masechta Sukkah, the tractate that deals with the Sukkah, that what is the Ikar, what is the essential part of the Sukkah? It's not the walls at all. In fact, there are very few laws that govern the walls. The Ikar, the Sukkah is what? The Ruh. And what does the Schach represent? The clouds of glory. And let me ask you a question. When our nation, we were passing through the wilderness for 40 years, a journey that would have only taken 11 days, 40 years. What led us through that journey as we were drinking water from a rock and food that fell out of heaven? The clouds of heaven, that's what protected us. So therefore we have a war where people who trust in the roof that you could see, feel, and touch, and they're coming to attack those people who are saying, you know what we trust in? The God of Israel. Do you know who we pray to? The God of Israel. Do you know who we bend our knee to? The God of Israel. And the Lord of hosts is his name. And therefore it's the people who trust in the roof versus those who trust in the clouds of heaven, personified by Schach. You are among the nations that trust in the clouds of heaven, and you rejected the roof? You're the ones who put your amunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though you couldn't see it. Remember, that's the whole definition of a Noachide. You had a way out of this whole thing. You could have said, it just makes sense to me. But no, you said, I am sticking with Klal Yisrael. I'm going to grab the hem of Klal Yisrael. I'm going to place my future, I'm going to place my security in the clouds of heaven. Then we have Zechariah chapter 14, verse 16, which tells us there that when this all happens, with all the nations, those who survive this, what will they celebrate with Klal Yisrael? What festival? Sukkot. Now we know why it's Sukkot, Kindlech. Sukkot is why? Because you trusted in the clouds. You trusted in what the Mashiach was coming from. You didn't trust in Bechemes Gog and Magog. You didn't trust in Gog and any of that. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to save you. We're living in an amazing time. I believe, it seems to me very clear, it's not that Mashiach is close. People are saying that. I think that it's here already. That means we are already in a process of Mashiach. I believe, this is just my view. I don't know. We're living in a time now that already it's here. It's happening. It's simply a process that is unfolding. Why is it taking so long? Why is it Yiddish ausgeschleppt? As it turns out that every time that the nation of Israel is redeemed, it never happens in a second. It always happens over a stretch of time. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants people to do tshuva. There are many people here that didn't love Klal Yisrael 20 years ago. They didn't love Judaism so much a few years ago. But suddenly Hashem just kept putting light and light in your life, and suddenly He said, no, 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 no. That's it. That's who I'm going to put my trust in. The clouds of heaven. I'm done with the roof. May we see the coming of the true Mashiach b'mheira yameinu quickly in our time. Chag Sameach, Modim L'Simcha. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And we'll do right now is, for many people, it's the fun part, is we're going to go to your questions. I wanted to leave time for a lot of questions. So if you have any questions, you have a question there. Yes?
How do you balance the return, or not the return, but the tshuva of the Gentiles in hundreds of thousands against the rising anti-Semitism?
Right. I want to repeat that because it's such an interesting question. How do you balance what seems to be happening now is that there is unquestionably, no matter how you measure this, it is axiomatic that there's a massive amount of tshuva among the nations of the world, something that really has never been seen. There was a movement like this actually in the first century, a little bit of a movement like this, and that led to a lot of conversion to Judaism. There was in the time of Ezra, there was, but nothing on the scale. But the point is, how do you deal with that? How do you sort out the fact that there is an unquestionably equally obvious rising anti-Semitism in the world, to the point that it's becoming in vogue again, and it's not even 100 years. You think as they give us like a break, like, okay, you have 25 more years, you think we would have that, right? So, and here's a lot what you don't have. If I may, with your permission, I want to add to this to heighten your question and italicize your question. Here's what you really don't find. Okay, so if I would stand on the streets of London, Antwerp, Amsterdam, Jakarta, and I'd ask people, what do you think about the Chinese people? What am I likely to hear? Tel Aviv, Cairo, Beirut, world. What will you likely hear? The response will probably go something like this. Now, when I say Chinese people, this is important because this is the most successful race in the world. Roughly 1 out of every 3 people in the world is Chinese. That's a very successful race. Not as successful as us, but. So this is not a people like, I'm asking you, what do you think about people from Luxembourg? I never met them, I'm not sure. What do you think about Eskimos? I haven't met an Eskimo in 20 years, I don't know. The Chinese, right? So what's the answer you're going to get? You almost surely will get, I don't know, I think they're okay. They see, right? They're okay. You'll get something of a parva answer. It's something going to be somewhere, 1 in 10, you're going to get an answer somewhere between 3 and 7. They're pretty good. I see they work really hard. The guy from China, the president, is a little odd, but, whatever, but they're good. They could cook. It's unbelievable. And they're good people. They work very hard. It's just a very parva answer you're going to get. Probably positive. Probably something positive, but it's going to be, try asking people to have a truth meter. In all these cities, what do you think of Jews? So if there's a truth meter, they can't lie, because so if they're telling what, there are no social consequences for it. So it's either I love them or I hate them. There's very little of, okay, I don't know, I really haven't thought about it before. Everybody's thought about it. And if you're not sure, we're on the headlines of I remember being in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and they had on the news, but it was in English, because in Malaysia, there are more English speakers than there are in Indonesia. So there was an English-speaking news, evening news in Kuala Lumpur. And let me tell you, of it was all about, you know, it had something to do with Israel. In Malaysia, like, what do they have to do on the other side of this huge continent? Anyways, so the answer is it's heightening. Free will can't be gone. Everybody has to have Bechira Chavshi. But it's just, what is happening is that both sides are taking sides. But it's all about either you love Israel and you want to be a part of that, or you hate Israel and you want it destroyed. So what we're living is the time, as we come close to Mashiach, is exactly that. You have those are the people of the Gog, and you have the people of the Sukkah. What about people in the middle? There are no people in the middle. That answers your question. Thank you. Any questions? Really, and if you're a Christian, get out. No, I'm kidding, I'm joking, that was not true. If you're a Christian, thank you for being here. Please, I won't be offended at all if you have any question at all. Yes, sir.
In Acts 15, the apostles came together and they obviously had a meeting and they discussed and they gave certain rules that they had to go out to the Gentiles, that they will serve no other God and they will stop warring and, you know, obviously all the stuff and not eat blood and all that type of stuff. Now that lines up a lot in line with the Noahide laws. It doesn't really, if you understand being a Christian, okay, got no problem with it, okay. Coming back, the problem, I understand Christianity is a perverse religion because it annuls the Torah totally. Okay, coming back and saying Yeshua says very clearly, I did not come to remove the Torah but to fulfill. I'm just going back from our understanding, okay? Matthew 5:17. I'm not criticizing at all, I'm just trying to get a point across, okay? Then Yeshua clearly makes a point, and throughout the entire New Testament is 85% Torah. The rest is just, if you understand Torah, you understand the Old Testament, it's 85% of it's Torah. He never once contradicted the Torah, unless you go to the Greek translations like the King James and the NIV. If you go and study the Scriptures Bibles, you go study the complete Jewish Bibles, which is David Stern, you will see that, and the Messianic and the Hebrew text that has now been found, and Yeshua never once contradicted the Torah. Actually, it is the Greek translators that contradicted the Torah, and that really took the Christianity away from Jews. Now in the end times, what we are finding, and this is something because I've been through all of them, okay, studying the 12 or 20 years. What I'm finding is that in my walk with the Lord, is that the Father is taking us back to the ways of God. Matthew 6:33, seek first my ways and my kingdom, and all things shall be added. And if the Father, Yeshua, kept on pointing to one thing, kept on pointing to Hashem, and he kept on pointing to the Father at times. He says, I'm just opening the door, the gateway to the Father. I'm just leading you to the Father, because the Father is the intrinsic one of all things. He's the kingdom, he's the key to everything.
So what's your question?
My question is, okay, Christians coming in, now starting to follow the Noahide laws, going back to the ways of old, start following Leviticus 23, start following what the eternal laws of God, start following the Torah the way God commanded it. Is that wrong in your eyes? If that is what God is asking us, and that is, I believe, the Spirit raising up as the end time, the same way the apostles did 2,000 years ago, is that wrong? Because indirectly we are actually doing the Noahide laws, exactly as you are.
Really great question, thank you. And thank you for having the courage to come here and asking that question. Very important. Well, let me frame what's your first name?
My name's Dennis.
Dennis. The question Dennis is asking, and I'm going to use the passages that you were citing in particular, because I think they're very valuable. Thank God that you're here today. So Dennis cited Acts chapter 15, a very important chapter in the Christian Bible. We don't know who wrote it, but whoever wrote the book of Luke definitely wrote the book of Acts. If you're not sure, read the first 5 verses of both of them and you'll be absolutely certain of this. But in Acts 15, we encounter the first ecumenical council of the church, meaning the founders of the church gather together and everybody's there. Peter, Paul, not Mary. They're all there. And they really are dealing with a very important question. So I want the people in the audience to understand what the context is. I don't want this to be taken out of context at all. And where they're coming to is the Jerusalem church. They're not going to Rome, they're coming to Jerusalem. James presiding over the Jerusalem church. And they're dealing with a very specific question. And it's important for you to know, or else you have no idea what he's asking. The question was regarding Gentiles, meaning former pagans. Pagans, you know what that word means. The word pagan actually doesn't come from any word that has anything to do with idolatry. Pagan is an old Latin word which refers to people who lived in the suburbs. Didn't come from the city, but that word came to mean people who were idol worshippers. And then had become Christians, and these are among the earliest Christians. And the question became this: when a person who is a pagan among the nations of the world, when they become Christians, do they have to become circumcised? Do they have to keep the laws of the Jews? And the answer, and it's important to the book of Acts to explain that everybody here is on the same page, it's very critical. The answer is they only have to keep, I'm going to insist, this is not in the text, but I'm going to say this, and no Christian would disagree with it, they only have to keep the 7 Noachide laws. They don't list all 7, but he's quite right. You can't eat, no idolatry, no eating from an animal that's been strangled, and so on and so forth. But they don't have to convert to Judaism in order to become Christian. This is really a legitimate question in their mind, because they saw Christianity, a word that's, well, Christian is only used 3 times in the New Testament, but it's not used really in a good way, in a positive way. But we're going to use that word because it's conventional, it's convenient. But at this very early stage, that is not the type of word that's being used. But let's use it now just so it's very clear what we're saying. So the thinking was that in order to become a Christian, in order to be a follower of Jesus, of course, you have to convert to Judaism. And of course, it is resolved that in fact you have to keep these basic laws that are logical. You can't eat any kind of meat, nothing for idolatry, nothing strangled animals, none of this stuff. Can't do any of that. That stuff is over. This is a very big deal. Why? Because there were state ceremonies where sacrifices were offered to the gods of the Greco-Roman world. And you have engage in eating from any of those sacrifices. You can't be involved in that. And I agree with you on that completely. That was certainly the thinking then. And that's why, from a Jewish point of view, the person who really shattered it all was not necessarily the author of the book of Matthew. And I would posit to you that Christians don't gain their theology. They gain their spirituality from the Gospels. They know the stories in the Gospels because it moves them. But doctrines come from the letters of Paul, predominantly. They're not getting doctrines from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. It is Paul. It is the book of Romans, the constitution of the New Testament, the book of Galatians, the Magna Carta of the New Testament. That's where they're getting their theology. Well, as it turns out, Paul really destroyed it all. That means Jesus wasn't the Messiah then either. Make no mistake about it. But Paul was responsible for this. Explicitly in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, a question is brought to Paul. What was the question? The question is exactly this point. That means now 1 Corinthians is written by Paul, and it is an indisputed letter. No question he wrote it. And they're coming to him with a big question. And the question is, we have meat here that was offered to idols, imagine. We have a carbon that was mamish offered to Zeus, offered to Mars, to Apollo, to Jupiter. Are we allowed to eat from this? This is 100% also. It is forbidden to a non-Jew to eat from such meat. A non-Jew does not have to eat that way, has shechita. Only a Jew has to do that. If there are many B'nai Noach who eat kosher, they're not mechuyev to, they're not obligated to. And what is Paul's answer? Everybody knows the answer. He said, you don't really consider these gods, they're gods. And essentially, I'm summarizing this relatively short chapter. You can go in there and eat it. Eza chutzpah. What right did Paul have to do that? And therefore, what right did Paul have to elevate the deity of Jesus? Why did he give us a Carmen Christi, a book, a text coming from another indisputed book? I'm not going to the pastoral epistles like Timothy and so on, which are highly questioned whether Paul wrote or not. But this, I don't want to get into it, it's not germane. But the Carmen Christi, what is the Carmen Christi? Anybody? No yeshiva, nothing. Okay. All right, it's Philippians chapter 2, verse 6 through 11. And there, Jesus, because he humbled himself and he didn't take what did not belong, he didn't grab. The Greek is harpagmos. He didn't take, it's a very important, he didn't take what belonged to him. Therefore, God exalted him and lifted him up and raised him up. And all of the glory that is given to God in Isaiah 45 is given to Jesus. And now Jesus is becoming deity. Now he will keep, we can go to the book of John and into the prologue and higher. And then, of course, we can make our way to Nicaea, where the church inflicts upon itself a wound from which it never recovered. So I would posit to you, my dear brother, that as it turns out, in the Christian Bible, there aren't many verses where Jesus says, don't keep the law. And you're quite right, in the Sermon on the Mount, we'll find this in none of the other Gospels. Think not that I've come to take away the law. I didn't come to break law, but to fulfill it. And anyone who changes one jot to the law will be considered least in the kingdom of heaven, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the Pharisees. That means the Pharisees, that's Orthodox Jews. That's the gold standard. So I want to say this to you. Paul brought avodah zarah to the world. He shattered what was inside the Christian Bible, because I am not saying to you there's nothing in the New Testament that is valuable. But anything true in the New Testament isn't new. And anything new in the New Testament isn't true. And therefore, it's important that, yes, we can look. I don't want to do it because I think it's not fair. I could, if I wanted to, go to Mark 7. I don't want to do it with you and go, well, it seems that it says literally there that it's not what comes into your mouth that defiles you, what goes out of your mouth that defiles you. But then the text continues saying, making all foods unclean. I happen to think that's a later interpolation. So I'm not, you see, so I don't, this is what I want to do with you, Stephen, right? Stephen? Dennis. I don't, and what you see I'm doing here is, instead of taking you out of context, I do provide the context, and I don't want to set up a straw man and topple it. That would be silly. So I do agree that Christianity began as it is a heresy of Judaism. You can be absolutely sure the idea that we find in the Gospels, that you're supposed to eat the body of Mashiach and you're supposed to drink his blood, is horrendous. It is a ritual cannibalism, and every person who loves Hashem should run, not walk away from it. And when Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 3, that Jesus rose on the third day, according to the scripture, guess what? There is no such scripture. It does not exist. He's making up verses that are just simply not there. It says that nowhere in the Jewish scriptures. And don't bother me with Hosea chapter 6. Hosea chapter 6 is referring to Ephraim, has nothing to do with the Messiah. And therefore, my friend, as I said, Christianity and other religions have borrowed many ideas from Judaism, and I grant to you that the earliest Christians would have not known what the doctrine of the Trinity was. It did require councils to gather together, Christians fighting over this. But when the Emperor of Rome in 312 at the Moldavian Bridge defeats his enemy, and he attributes his battle, his success, to the God of the Christians, and converts to Christianity, and then allows Christianity to be a legal rather than an illicit religion. And then ultimately Christianity will become a preferred religion by the time we come to the end of the 4th century and we meet our last emperor that presides both over the East and the West. I'm talking about no one less than Theodosius. By then, half of the empire was Christian, and only 2 religions were illicit, Christianity and Judaism. That was it. So I want to say this to you. Our problem is not with what we share in common. As it turns out, we can open up many holy books, and you'll find many Jewish ideas in the holy books. And they saw a good thing and they took it. That's fine. Where is eating the body of Mashiach and drinking his blood? And where does it say anywhere that if you believe that Messiah died for your sins, you'll be saved, and if you don't believe it, you'll be damned? Mark 16:16. It says it nowhere. And therefore I beg every person who believes in Christianity, first, I want to ask this of you. If anything I said that offended you here today, I ask you for forgiveness. because I'm just speaking from my heart to yours, okay? But I'm not going to lie to you. I don't see you as a low Gentile, a guy, he's this. You are created b'tselem Elokim. Inside of you there's a neshama, it's a chelek mimal mamash. You have a soul inside you. You're created b'tselem Elokim. The dog you have at home, gorgeous, but not tselem Elokim. I know your dog, you love your dog, but not tselem Elokim. He's programmed that way. That's it, it's programmed to be loyal to you. But you have two parts to you. This, your mind, which is your neshama, that's really, and the rest of this, and there's the tension. And we're only saying, choose HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is a animal that genetically is very close to a human. It's so close to a human being that we can actually borrow its organs, cross-transplant into humans. Talking about a pig. A pig is a very important animal in Jewish thought because it's mafreses parsa, it has split hooves but doesn't chew its cud. Outwardly, you look at me, there's Jewish things about me, give a look. And if you ever see a pig, you see it all the time here, if you ever see a pig, its split hooves are really very pronounced. On a deer, you got to look a little closer. If you're in Ein Gedi, you have to look a little bit closer, you see the split of a pig, give a look. There's nice kosher things in me, but then you go inside. Don't go to Matthew 5:17. Go into Galatians. Go into where Paul says the most odious things about circumcision. Go inside and you see that it's not Malager. And that's why Hashem made the pig. It's a very intelligent animal, genetically close, but don't forget it's a pig. It's not kosher, even though it has things in it that are so close to humans that ophthalmologists who practice surgery on the eye do it on a pig. Why? In Saudi Arabia won't allow it to happen because they don't allow pigs in the country. I'm not making this up. And that's why Hashem made the pig, that even though the pig is genetically close to the human, it's the chazir, which means the chazar, it's going to return it all to the Mashiach. But Hashem made a pig in a very special way. How did he make him? The anatomy of the pig is Hashem made it that a pig cannot look at the sky, cannot look up, only look down at the ground. You never in your whole life saw a pig that ever looked up. It can't look up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not let the pig look up because the pig is walking around saying, I'm kosher, look at me. But I really want you to know that this is a pig and it cannot look at heaven. And although there are features in the pig that closely mimic what a human being is, it's not a human being. And it's not Maligera. And all its role is, the purpose of Christianity is to chazar, to return it back to Mashiach. And let us hope that we see the true Mashiach quickly in our time. I want to offer you an opportunity, if you'd like. I'm just meeting you because it's a very big topic. First of all, again, thank you so much for being willing to ask the question. And if you would consider, I don't know how long you're staying, I would love to sit and study with you, Tyra, if you'd like. Okay? We'll talk afterwards. Thank you for your question. Any other questions here? Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask from your position of a lot of the people here that the questions that are coming up in the discussion should power the Noachide, but specifically speaking from, and people say,
just if you just, it's a little trouble hearing you. If you a little louder and a little slower, I apologize. I just
a lot of the questions and a lot of what is geared is to the followers of the Noachide process, the Noachide movement. But my question was more towards the what people would call Nomaila Mata, from the people that they're going to, the address, not the people that are following, but the address that they're going to. And it seems that there are two sort of like energies that exist that the person who they're going to is faced with, and that is that a lot of what a lot of the people that you encounter, they're like, oh, it's Sukkot, oh, it's Yom Kippur, oh, it's like, you know, Judaism is good and everything is good, and we want to have a role to play as Noachides. We want to have a role to play as Noachides, but immediately when they're coming close, automatically starts the red light, which says, hey, they can't, the concept of Jewish that they can't add witnesses that they're not commanded to. They're crossing over bureaucratic lines. There are things that are only commanded to Jewish people to do. For example, Shabbos, most importantly, or Torah. You know, there are certain things that was given as a parcel to the Jewish people. So this is like there's this opposing energies where they're like coming close, but at the same time they're kind of like saying like there's like the space where you are at, and
just they want to look at. I want everyone to understand you. Go ahead, continue.
So my question is so the question is how do you, in general, I guess it's more of a hashkafa question, how do you balance the people that are coming close, but at the same time Allah is trying to put them in a specific place that is specifically for them and is not for the Am HaNivchar, for the Jewish people. It's not the same. There's some sort of boundaries. So where is that, like those forces of coming Ratzah and Shuv there?
I understand.
Allah point of view.
What's your first name?
Elisha. That's not my first name.
So I'm going to completely rephrase your question. And so, because you're asking a very, really a simple, meaning it's a very clear answer, and I just want to tighten up because I think I know exactly what you're asking. Now, as it turns out, there are many halachas, many laws regarding those who are B'nai Noach, meaning followers. They believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But you could see that sometimes that they're making a lot of mistakes. There are a lot of, very frequently, there are ideas that are conveyed within these people who are learning about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the process, they're washing themselves. You know, the Navi Yeshaya used that language because if you go into a room where everybody is smoking, right, and then you're not smoking, even once you leave the room, everything is full of smoke. So you have to get rid of the smoke, and that often, for the Christian, takes time to do that. But the point is, they're saying things or doing things that really are not the best way or not the proper way. And how do you deal with that? What's the deal with that? That's sort of simplifying your question, because there are things that sometimes are being conveyed among many people who are now come to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that aren't the proper way, without getting into the details, whether they're keeping something they shouldn't be keeping. I'm just saying, just generally speaking. Okay? Is that fair? Good. Okay. Well, there's a very interesting thing he's asking. I think about this all the time. So, as it turns out, when Zechariah prophesied in chapter 8, verse 23, that 10 Gentiles will grab the hem of a Jew and say, "Take us with you," because now we know that God is with you. Why was he saying that 2,500 years ago to a generation that was not going to see Mashiach? I'm not going to get complicated here. Mashiach could have come before the building of the second temple. It could have happened. There's a Gemara in Saita that goes into this in great depth. But because, you have to look at the Marsha, it's in Saita, those who are writing this down, Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, so it's 36a, and see the Marsha. So it says, because the Jews increased their sin at that time, what was their sin? They didn't come back to Eretz Yisrael. They stayed in Bavel. How many Jews came in the first Aliyah? 42,360. And because of that, it did not happen. So why is Zechariah at this point in chapter 8? You could be sure that Zechariah is not even thinking for a moment that Mashiach is coming now. Why? Because the opportunity is already gone, and he's really answering a question that was asked him in chapter 7 from Babylonian Jews, from Jews in Borough Park, sent a question to Zechariah, who was the Gadol Hador. He was the chief rabbi of the Klal Yisrael. He was the greatest giants of his time. He was only one of 3 Nevi'im that lived at the time. And the question was, do we have to keep fasting on Yom Kippur if, in fact, the temple now has been rebuilt? It was really startling. And he goes into a rant. What did I say? I'm sorry, on Tisha B'Av. Do we still have to continue to fast on Tisha B'Av? Because after all, this temple was rebuilt. It's a fascinating thing. But he finally gets to this. He then finally answers the question in chapter 8:19, that all these days of rejoicing. Question. why do we have these types of prophecies? The prophecy that was mentioned earlier in Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19 and 20. Surely the nations will come to you, will come to the Jewish people and say, surely we've inherited lies and vanity where there's no truth. How can a man make unto himself gods when they are not? Why are they talking this way? Mi hemen l'shmua useinu Israel shel mi niglaso. That's the Goyim saying, who would have believed this report? Look, to the arm of the Lord has been revealed. The nations are turning to the Jews. Why do we have this type of prophecy necessary for a generation that did not see Mashiach? So I want to tell you something very important about Messianic prophecy. Messianic prophecy, of course, was there to tell people what will happen at some point in the future. But there's another layer to this, which often I believe is missed. The Messianic Age is a time of utopia, meaning it's a time where the world is in its ideal state. That's what we're all shooting for. Meaning, Messianic prophecy is not just a guidepost to the future, because that's how people think of it. Oh, this is what's going to happen in the future. May it happen soon. But I want you to know this, Kinderlich, that Messianic prophecy is telling you today, telling you 2,500 years ago, this is the way things should be. This is ideal. This prophecy is telling us that those who are among the nations of the world that want to understand Torah and how they should live their lives should not go to other people of the nations of the world, should not be going to Bnei Noach. This is a big mistake, a huge mistake, and again, into huge trouble. This is not, people look at Isaiah chapter 2, verse 1 through 4. The most ecstatic, numinous chapter, explosive chapter of the Messianic Age, that this mountain will be raised above all nations, and only a few words, 6 words about Mashiach, and he will rebuke many nations. That's all he does, is Haychacha. That's it. No blinding with the healing and all this, and all this is all sheker v'chazav. And what's going to happen? The nations of the come. A big mistake. I say this, please don't be offended, but I know you didn't come here for me to sit here and read Shakespeare and make up all kinds of nonsense. I'm telling you the way it is. There, of course, are for all of us who are children of Hashem, there are certain pitfalls along the way. And the most dangerous thing for Bnei Noach is to be choosing their Rebbe as another Ben Noach. This creates tremendous kilkel. This creates a tremendous problem. So it's very, very important that those of you who are Bnei Noach, many of you will choose to join the Jewish people. Many of you will, but wherever it is, make sure you're learning from someone who's a Talmud Chacham, someone who's a real scholar, someone who's a religious Jew, not someone someone you know who I'm talking about. Make sure you're not having the head teacher. Now, it's true that sometimes a person is going to ask, who's a Ben Noach, is going to ask another person, Halloween, is it okay you should stay far away from Halloween. Stay away from that filth. Stay away from that. Should I go into church? Stay away. My cousin is having a bar mitzvah. I'm just kidding. Don't go in. It's not technically a violation of the 7 Noachide laws, but it's a horrible thing to do. No one should be walking to a church. The standard is that because a Jew is not chayav misa, is not worthy of the death penalty for entering church, not praying and praying in church, is death penalty. But the basic rule is that anything that a Jew would be worthy of the death penalty is forbidden to a non-Jew. Okay, be very careful. But it's still not a big thing that a person goes, I'm in church, I'm just not going to pray. Don't do it. Stay away from it. So here's what I wanted to say to you. That the key problem is, let's go to the sherish, let's go to the root. Let's not talk a whole long speech. What we want to do is, you want to be going to Talmidei Chachamim, people who are knowledgeable. You have Rabbi Posen here, Rabbi Aaron here, you have many Rabbanim right over here, Rabbi Emmanuel over here, a very dear friend. You have many Rabbanim here. Make sure you're learning with them. Of course, you're going to have people like Jim Wong, brilliant man who I love really very much, really very, very much. And there are people like that. Of course, people ask quick questions of this, or where did this, or what did it, of course. But really, Jim Wong became a Talmud Chacham in the B'nai Noach movement, one of the leaders in it, because he studied from Jews, he studied from people who really Talmidei Chacham, from scholars. That's how he went. He didn't go off to some other to go. He learned by the top people, and he became an amazing person. So but if you want to see B'nai Noach go off the track and inculcate all kinds of silly things, all kinds of silly notions, it means that the normative source of information are other B'nai Noach. And there's a very, very big mistake. Okay? So thank you for your question. Are there any, yes, Rabbi?
Yes, so coming off this last point, I was once speaking at Nera Ella, and the rabbi there was training other young rabbis to go to America to take different positions, rabbi on college campus, etc. So the question was asked of me, and I'd like to ask this question to Rabbi Singer, is because of this problem, the Yiboneh movement, they're sort of make up their own siddur, their own laws. So if someone's generally interested in becoming a B'nai Noach, what are the kosher resources in America and in here that they can follow the proper path?
Yeah, so in a way, the answer to the question is what should people do? So there's a double-edged sword here. So the obvious answer is that people have access to information in a way that never before. You know what I'm going to say? You go on YouTube and there's amazing rabbis teaching there. The problem is there are people who call themselves rabbis who are very, very dangerous. They might be charismatic, but they don't know what they're talking about. So you have to make sure that you're studying from people who are really very knowledgeable, who are well known to be Talmidei Chachamim, who have that they're not just some little group following this guy, but it's someone who has really community sanction. Just be careful of that. So there is a lot of access to information. Now, of course, if you live in Yerushalayim, if you live in Hebron, as some of the people here are from, and so on, so then you have an endless source of information because you're among Talmidei Chachamim. But there are people who live in Ipis, Utah, or live in Wyoming, and where there's more moose than there are people. So in these places, you might get into trouble. So just be careful who you're learning from, because there are, in articles on the internet, there's more garbage than there is authentic. So make sure who you're studying from.
You have an Ancient Torah.
So great site. I'm just going to list one right now. So if you go to aish.com, that's one, right? Rabbi Bozen gives another one, but aish.com is a fabulous site with a wealth of information. Another site would be
and don't forget Yiboneh.
Yiboneh is Yiboneh.com. Okay, so there you go. And of course, just speak to the people here. Anybody has that question, please do. Just make sure that, look, when you go to a doctor, right, what do? You go to any guy sitting with a chicken on his head and he's walking around he's wearing a kangaroo suit? No, you make sure. If you're not Jewish, so it could be any doctor. If you're Jewish, he has to be the head of I don't know, he's the top doctor. That's such a hard doctor to see. No one ever even saw him before. And he's not just he's the head of all the doctors in the whole country. He's the top doctor. And he's the head of Mount Sinai or Mount Rushmore and whatever. But we're not interested in that. Whatever it is, make sure it's someone who's a well-known personality. Because there are a lot of people that say most outrageous things out there. So it cuts both ways. Just be careful, like you would if you're going to the doctor, chas v'chalila, and something's not right. You just make sure the man has proper credentials, he has a name, you know this doctor, he's good, and so on and so forth. Same thing, if your physical body, you'd be careful which doctor you went to, and make sure that he has it. You certainly would do it for your soul. You had a question?
Something that you know that I forgot, but I can remember the reference. Jesus for Christians. Jesus himself said, go to your rabbi. What am I talking about?
Well, it's not exactly that, but what we find in the Christian Bible is that if you want to know what the truth is, it is in the hands of the Pharisees and the scribes. And there is a distinction in the Gospels. There's a distinction to be made of what you think of Pharisees, Perushim, that's just Orthodox Jews. It's an anachronism, Orthodox Jews. But as far as knowledge of information, They are the ones who have it. The passage you're referring to is Matthew 23, 1 and 2 in particular. Matthew 23 explicitly says that the Pharisees, that's Orthodox Jews, scribes, there's no Sadducees mentioned there because they don't believe in the oral Torah, they don't believe in, so the Pharisees and scribes sit in Moses' seat. Whatever they tell you, you must follow. Do as they do, but do as they say, but don't do as they do, because they're hypocrites and vipers and awful things. I mean, it goes into a screed, a screaming screed that ends with Matthew 23 verse 39, where Jesus then turns to the Jews and says that you're returning, you're becoming Christians. That's not the word. I'm just saying that's what's meant there. I will not return unless you say, come, blessed are those who come in the name of the Lord. Many dispensationalists believe this, and in fact, non-dispensationalists also have belief throughout history that it is the conversion of the Jew, the conversion of the Jews alone that will trigger the second coming based on that passage. But we find that very frequently when Paul is asserting his credentials, because Paul in his letters is, at every turn, his interlocutors are fellow Christians, meaning, followably, I'm using the word Christian because it just works. Okay? The word Christian, I said, is very rarely found in the Christian Bible. So he is fighting with Christians. He is showing Peter to his face. In Galatians chapter 2. In Galatians chapter 3, he's going to folks who lived in Asia Minor and going, who bewitched you, O Galatians? Meaning, who came? He set up all these churches, and they believe you have to keep the law. And he's going, who filled your head with all this? And then 3 is the most important chapter of Galatians in terms of, but it's loaded with stuff that's beyond the scope of your question. The key is that whenever Paul wants to assert his CV, meaning that my Christology is correct, and he wants to show you that who he's from, what my credentials are, he doesn't say I'm a Sadducee. He says I'm a Pharisee. And not any Pharisee, but I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees, zealous for the law. The 2 sections you would look at is Galatians chapter 1 and Philippians chapter 3. So he is telling, it is no matter what you think of the Jews, but their knowledge, they are right. When it comes to knowledge, they are right. They may have been blinded. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 3 and 4, they may be a veil over their eyes, but the knowledge is of the Jews. When the Samaritan woman in the book of John asked Jesus, tell me, where is this holy mountain? Is it in Gerizim, as my father says, or in Jerusalem? So people always call, Jesus said salvation is of the Jews, and they think it means because Jesus was a Jew and he died. That's not the context. That's ripped out of context. The context is, if you want to know, go to the Jews. The content, and he tells this Samaritan woman, it's follow the Jews on this one. Gerizim is not the holy place. So you're absolutely correct. I have a chapter on this in volume 1 where I explain the history of the church and how it progressed, and we can actually delineate this and just walk through this. And we would have, in fact, in Matthew, a parable that Paul would never say, the sheep and the goats. Where it has nothing to do with you've died for your sins or anything. It just has to do with if you're a good person, you go to heaven. If you're not a good person, you go to hell, and don't think you're going to say my name and that's going to save you. That would be a very early kind of text. That's something that very early Christians would have said. Paul will never use that kind of parable because Paul is all about Romans chapter 1. It's all about the cross. It's all about that's the only salvation. So that is, it's important because this is going to offend the Christians here. But the New Testament is hostile to the Jews. So, and I'll say it so I don't offend the Christians, is hostile to Jewish leaders. So I'll say it because I don't want Christians to be offended, but it really is, the church fathers weren't crazy, okay? When Luther read the New Testament, he drew the only logical conclusion about the Jews. And if I would only be exposed to the New Testament, I would hate me too. And if you don't believe that, just read John chapter 19 in context, and it would be hard to see it any other way. But the bottom line is, it is correct. As far as knowledge and information, it's the Orthodox Jews, and that's why Paul is asserting that he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. There is a claim made in the book of Acts that Paul would have never made, because when all of Paul's indisputed letters, I mean 7 of the 13 letters, are written during the 50s. A possibility is 1 Thessalonians is written in 49. But let's just say all of Paul's letters all of those 7 very important letters are written during the 50s. So that's at a much earlier stage. Paul is never going to make the claim that he's a student of Rabbi Gamliel, the greatest giant of the generation. But Acts is writing already in, let's say, 85. 85, everybody's dead already. You can claim anything you want to. So in Acts chapter 5, Paul's already a student of Gamliel and all this stuff there. But that's the point. Being an Orthodox Jew was the gold standard of knowledge, and according to Matthew chapter 5, it was a standard of righteousness, which if you can't exceed that, then you can, then you need. So there it is. So thank you for that question. Are there any questions? The gentleman over there, yes. And then you have a question after that. Just questions.
Question is that I want to summarize quickly, if I understand correctly, reason of ancient Christianity and the way they maybe.
I confess to you that I'm really having a lot of trouble hearing. I don't know if others.
Look forward.
But if you could do this, because we're running out of time, if you could do this, you're fine right there. Just like keep it to like a kind of a question. I'll unwrap it.
Question is I understand correct from your words and my thought, the reason of creation of Christianity and later Islam, it is after failure of original plan of mission of Jews to bring rest of humanity, these barbarian and idolatrous nations, closer to idea of Torah and to prepare them for coming of Mashiach.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll explain with this gentleman. What's your first name?
Jonathan, it's a Jewish name.
Jonathan is a very Jewish name, for sure. So the question is, does not Christianity, that means whatever is new, right? Is Christianity not a really good thing because it brings people closer to the Jewish faith? This idea that he's expressing is not new. Talking about new and true. Maimonides of blessed memory, he's really quite the giant, 12th century, was nifter, passed away in 1104. He was here in Eretz Yisrael in 1165. Maimonides, in his most famous work, the 14-section work on Jewish law, in particular, we're talking about the laws of kings and their wars. The last 2 chapters were most interesting because that's where Christianity is discussed extensively, including the Messianic Age, and the role of Christianity. I'm just going to discuss Christianity right now for a moment. Now, isn't it odd that the world, after the destruction of the Second Temple, is filled with religions that are very similar or based on Judaism? Prior to Churban Bayesheni, prior to the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70, the kind of religions that we would encounter were henotheistic religions from the East. Hinduism and Buddhism, Zoroastrianism was all over the place. And certainly the gods of the empire, the Roman Empire, again, henotheistic religions. Henotheistic is henotheistic, Greek, one God, but it's like one supreme God and a lot of the deities going down the chute. That's pretty much what you see outside of the monotheisms today. And in Christianity, Christianity is a henotheism, unless you're a Christadelphian or a J Witness and so on, then you'd actually be a monotheist. But setting that aside. So the question is, isn't Christianity then a good thing? That is not at all what Maimonides is saying, and Christianity has done enormous damage to the nations of the world, but it's a part of God's plan. I need to explain. Maimonides explicitly says that it's idolatry, and he says explicitly, and so available in every language, that in fact there was no greater stumbling block than Christianity, and quotes a passage in Daniel to tell us how wonderful Jesus was. And this is often misunderstood because people teach this not correctly. Rather, what he says is the following: the world is now filled with religions that are Judaism based, meaning that to Christians, if you ask the Christian, tell me, if Jesus is not the Messiah, who has the truth today? If it turns out that Christianity is not a true religion, that the core teachings that are unique to Christianity, that Christianity is not true, then what is then the default? Then what is it default? Then who then today has the truth? I can rephrase that. 1 minute before Jesus was born, or technically 1 minute before the cross, who had the truth? The Jews, the religious Jews. Okay, if Christians don't like this. This is not the kind of thing that makes them smile. But if you ask the Christian, look, if you're wrong about this, they would have to say the religious Jews have the truth. If we're wrong about this Jesus thing. Now, this is very important because we find in the scriptures, in the prophets, that when the Messiah comes, the nations immediately get it. What we find in the Hebrew Bible is that this doesn't take a lot of, all right, let me explain to you that there's a concept of one God and that there are commandments, and no, they immediately go, oh boy, we made a terrible mistake. Jeremiah 16 as an example. Find the same thing in Malachi, all over. They immediately make the mistake. They realize they've made a mistake, and what unfolds is Isaiah chapter 60. Arise and shine, for your light has come. The sons of them that afflicted you will come bowing to you. Not that they're going to bow to us like we're kings, but rather they're going to return to the Jewish faith. The light is coming. And the question is, how might that happen? Therefore, the God, the Almighty, blessed be His holy name, fills the world with religions that are Judaism based. That Judaism is the default, which means it falls to it. So therefore, when the Messiah comes, they will immediately understand their error and then turn to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What Maimonides is chas v'chalila never saying, and he is of all the Rishon most critical of Christianity and Jesus, what he is not saying is that Christianity is a good thing. It's simply that God is saying all the idolatry that existed prior to the destruction of the Second Temple, all that was very different than Judaism. But one thing is important, listen up. Although the nations of the world had to be, their minds now had to be filled with the basic idea that there's one God, a basic idea, one that's highly imperfect in Christianity and is much more perfected in Islam. But their minds are filled with these ideas. But there's one thing they can't have, and that's what? As it says in Exodus chapter 31, that Shabbos is Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael. That Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, the keeping of Shabbos, is only between God and Israel. So what does he do? It's an amazing thing. People don't even see it. He goes to Christianity. Okay, you're going Sunday. Islam, you're going Friday. Shabbos is just for the Jew. How foolish. Hashem turned over the world. That means there's no, if you ask a Christian, why do you go to church on Sunday? Now, there are always been Sabbatean movements in the church that have been crying, let's get it back to Saturday, and they've always been regarded as most extreme heretics and cults. For what? Just saying it's supposed to be on Saturday instead of Sunday? But they get, this is like, if you want to start a go to war, that's how you do it. So the church is just saying it's Sunday, 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 and the Shabbos is just for the Jews. And what do we Jews do? Never comes Shabbos, the chas v'chalila Jew opens up the Wall Street Journal. Well, you idiot. Hashem went and changed the whole world, turned over the whole world, so that Shabbos is the only view, and you're going looking at the daily news. And you're a silly person. So listen, Shabbos is a beautiful thing. It's eternal, it's forever, it'll never be broken. I don't care what Paul says, I don't care what's preached at any pulpit. And please God that we should see the coming of the true Mashiach, quickly in our time. Thank you for that question. Do we have time? I just didn't ask, do we have time for another question or not? I don't want. One more, last question. Yes.
It talks to a lot of Noachides.
That's all right. I can't hear her.
I talk to a lot of Noachides on Facebook. They love Jews. They want to do Sukkot. They want to do all these things. But it's really hard. They're very isolated. And so a lot of them, it's sort of a hot potato, is they think it's easy if they become reformed. And so I said something and then I got kicked out.
Got kicked out of what?
Of the group. And
a Noachide group?
I can't say.
A Noachide group?
It's William's group.
All right, I'm sorry I asked that question. What is your question for me?
I want to know, well, is it okay for them? I mean, they're going to be reformed. Now they'll be Jews.
Right.
And then I feel bad for them.
So,
they're mixed up.
So let me answer your question. Thank you. There are many people who attend Reform temples who believe in God 100% and think the Torah is from God. There are people like that. It's not a lot. But the movement itself is utterly heretical. Now, what happens is today you have the young boys and girls who are coming out of Nifty, who are coming out of the Green Family Camp near Waco, Texas, and they're just great kids. They don't know it. Their minds are just filled with this at Hebrew Union. It's very easy to talk to them. It wasn't like the old guys, Abraham Geiger. But the Reform movement today, now there are individuals who go and they don't even know what the movement believes. In fact, I would say to you that if I walk the streets of Jerusalem and just ask people who are knowledgeable people, what does change that? If I waited at a Reform temple, there are not many of them in this country, but I asked people who identify as Reform Jews, what does the Reform movement believe that is unique? Not that you don't believe in this. What do you believe that makes you... Don't tell me that you're for diversity and LGBTQ, because the liberal Catholics also believe. What is unique? People have a very hard time even answering that question. But as it turns out, the Reform movement was literally born in sin. It was hatched for a purpose. It was part of the Enlightenment and was the result of a horrendous war in Germany that lasted 30 years. And its purpose was, in the 19th century, utterly rejected the coming of Mashiach, extracted the coming of the Messiah from its Hebrew Union prayer book, removed every concept of the resurrection dead. In Hebrew Union College, they teach that the Torah Chas v'Chlila was not written by God, and Moses probably didn't exist, and there were multiple authors, and Daniel's a forgery that was written during the Hanukkah. I didn't want to say more of this. So although they are acting superficially, they're Hanukkah candles. But you ask them, don't have to ask me, do you really believe that this miracle described as that the candle lasted for 8 days? They go, nah, it never happened. Try it yourself, believe me. Ask them, why do you have organs in your synagogues? Trust me, they're going to tell you we got it because that's what the churches did. So the Reform movement, it really, even though it is filled with many people who just don't know any better, it means be kind to them, don't attack them, please. Because this generation, they don't know anything. But the movement really is one that's designed to go and destroy Torah. It's an opponent. It's not just they're mistaken or misapprehended and they're on the wrong derech. The whole purpose of it is to destroy Torah, and that's why there's nothing left of 19th century Reform Jews. They're all gone. They're all gone today, unless somebody became a Baal Tshuva. But please, be very careful. I don't want any of you going over to a Reform Jew or Reform Rabbi and saying something that they don't know any better today. In fact, if we are, I'll say this to you, my dear brothers and sisters, if Klal Yisrael is held accountable, it's because what religious Jews are doing or not doing enough of. Because we're the ones who have the education, and we need to care more and to do more and to strengthen ourselves, bechazik ourselves, and prepare the world. Forget them. But no better. Not that against them, or they're the opposition or the enemy. Forget it. They know nothing. The young Reform, the boys and girls coming out of the Reform movement today are just kids who, this is what they know is nifty. They know they've lost, and they know they're assimilating, they're gone. This is not like it used to be in the early 20th century. In the 19th century, really, we were at war on the streets. So the answer is stay far away. It's better to go to McDonald's than to go into a Reform temple. Okay, this is very, very important. It's very, very dangerous. It's very dangerous. But please, don't go over to Reform and say, oh, you're this and that. They mamish don't know any better. And there are Yechidim who go to Reform temples who really, they're really fully from. They just don't know any of this. One other nakud I want to say, because I'm saying this publicly, there are a few, I know 4 Reform rabbis in America that are fully Orthodox Jews and believe everything. And they feel that they have a job or a role to do. This is their view. And their view is that they could accomplish more in the Reform movement, they themselves keep all halacha and believe it. They believe in counter-missionary everything, top to bottom. But their cheshbon is that I can accomplish more in the Reform movement trying to get it back to Orthodox Judaism than I could accomplish. That's their cheshbon between them and God. I've had my conversations with them. They're dear friends. I'm not going to sit here and talk about that. But this is a very unusual thing. That's a weird thing, but I don't want anyone to misunderstand. I want everything to be on the table so we understand. To all of you, my sweet brothers and sisters, let it be that soon we're going to see the coming of the true Mashiach, B'mheira b'yameinu. Thank you, Rabbi Tovia. Yiboneh, thank you so much for making so much so possible for so many. Thank you.
Yiboneh, 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 Yiboneh,